giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of Selling Travel Podcast. I am so excited for this episode. It actually comes to us from a listener just like you. Cassie reached out to me via Instagram and had a question that I think that a lot of travel advisors would relate to. And her question was, I'm soft-spoken and I'm concerned that I might come off as either shy or not knowing what I'm talking about. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever wondered or worried, do you maybe not sound confident, or maybe that you might not know what you're talking about? See, when you're trying to sell to people, and yes, if you're a travel advisor, you are in sales, but nobody wants to go through all that effort, all that energy, doing all that research, only to have people feel like they're not comfortable or that they don't think you understand what you're doing. The reality is that there is a lot going on, not just for you, however, but also for your clients. See, a lot of times our clients are spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And I know I've said it many times before that what was the FOMO, the fear of messing up or fear of missing out, is now FOMO, the fear of messing up. And that biggest fear is underlined when they don't feel confident that the people they're working with are the right people or have the right answers. So when Cassie reached out and said, I might come off as shy or that I don't know what I'm talking about, that becomes a real concern. So let's look at this from a couple of different ways. First, let's look at the shy. As somebody who is an introvert, and yes, I do get up on stages and I speak in front of hundreds and hundreds of travel advisors at a time. And when I get up there, I am in it. I have no problems. I can work an entire room. I just did one a couple of weeks ago. I think there was 500, 600, maybe a few more in the room. And I felt like I was able to connect with nearly everybody in the room from the stage. But yet when I came off that stage and now it's one-to-one, I'm like, oh my goodness, let me just find a wall so I can shove my back up against it because the introvert in me just comes flying back out again. And I have that fear. What if they think I'm shy? Oh, wait, I am. But what if they think I'm unapproachable? What if they think I'm stuck up or I'm rude? In all fairness, I am just scared spitless. I am so uncomfortable with when people come up. And yet I am so crazy appreciative when they do because they've initiated rather than me needing to initiate. I get it. I'm in sales. That's crazy. That's not the way it should be. But when I've come off the stage, I no longer feel that I'm in that role. Wow, was that ever a squirrel? Okay, let's get back to it. So the concern about shy is a big one. The difference is, are you? If you are, then we need to work on that. I personally am working on that. I work with my therapist on it. I work to see what that looks like, what that feels like. I need to find a recentering. Sometimes that means I need to go sit at a table as a part of a group again and just connect one-on-one. And then now we're back in it. We're back into the conversation. But now let's get to the second part. Not knowing what I'm talking about. That one, I think, hits at a whole other level because now we're talking confidence. We're talking about the ego. Because, of course, our ego is designed to keep us safe. That is its entire job. And so if we start to have fears or start to have worries, again, that's where the confidence is part of it, then it starts to attack that core that we need to have intact in order to be able to survive. or at least so far as our primal brain understands. So many of us were taught a story as a child. Your story is quite likely different from mine, but at the same time could also be similar. Some of it's going to be generational, some of it's going to be demographical, some of it's going to be logistical, based on where you grew up, what that looked like. I grew up in rural Alberta. I grew up in an era where we were outside for all hours of the day, playing all the time outside in the bush, in the fields, in the ditches, wherever. And a lot of times I would hear children are to be seen but not heard. I was told to be quiet many times, that I was too loud, that my voice was too much, that I was too much. So there was a lot of my life where I was working to pull that back in, trying not to make waves, to keep things as calm as can be. We all have a story, we all have a history to which the way we think today is connected. The difference is how do we let go of that? How do we move on from that? I know when I started to find my voice, it was a scary thing. I will say one of the most I can pinpoint a handful of times where I truly felt like my voice just flew out from my toes. There was times that I'm like, I have no idea where that came from. Oh my heavens. I don't know how to handle this. One in particular was when I sat on a franchise advisory council and I was representing my whole entire region of other franchise owners. And we were negotiating some things and working on a special project. And I remember the resistance we got. And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean, no? And I said, no, this doesn't work. The math ain't mathin'. And I remember people being disgusted by me that I would speak out. But I wasn't there just to represent myself. I was there to represent the other agency owners within the region. It was my job to have a seat at the table for them. I ruffled a lot of feathers that day. That afternoon, I ruffled some within their head office. And I remember going back to the airport that night. I called a friend of mine and I said, I just took on this person, to which they responded, nobody takes on that person. And he said, I did something stupid. And I shook like a leaf. But in that moment, I didn't. The irony is after that, I remember running into this person at another conference. And when I said how much I enjoyed something, they said to me, thank you, because I really hold your opinion in high esteem. Because I know if you are saying it, you genuinely mean it. When I was first finding my voice, it was hard in those moments to speak out and speak up. Now I have an entire career that's based off of speaking out and speaking up. My husband actually tells me that's probably why I have a podcast, is so that I can talk all I want. And I'm not going to say he's wrong. But how do we get it so that people know that we know what we're talking about when we're talking? There's two things in particular: the tonality of the way we say it and the punctuation we put at the end. My husband does not understand tonality. There's a difference between take the garbage out and take the garbage out. He doesn't understand that there's two meanings to that. Growing up, when my mom would call us for dinner, we'd all be outside and she would say, dinner. And if we didn't come, she would say, dinner. It was the same word, just with a different tone behind it. The second one is the punctuation. The punctuation, actually, I'm going to say the punctuation and the emphasis on what word. And maybe that goes a little bit into the tone. But the punctuation, when you say a statement, The biggest mistake travel advisors and salespeople as a whole do is that they put a question mark on the end of their statement. If a statement is a statement, it either has a period or an exclamation mark. It never has a question mark. See, when we put question marks at the end of our statement, we lose all the authority that came with that question or that statement. It does not matter that you have the information. It does not matter that you know it inside out, because all they heard was your uncertainty. There was a time when fear of missing out was the big deal, the FOMO of it all. Now it's FOMO, the fear of messing up. And the moment you add in the uncertainty, you've just magnified uncertainty to your clients. See, in this new world of FOMO, your clients need you to have so much confidence that you have some left over for them to borrow. The way that you demonstrate confidence is with periods and exclamations at the end of your sentences rather than question marks. Years ago, when I had my agency, we had a physical location. And I remember a client coming in and he had seen the sandwich board outside. Yes, it was back in the day. We did the sandwich board outside. We did the deals of the day. Yes, I've learned my lessons over the years. But he said, "Oh, Panama, is it safe?" And the advisor standing beside me goes, yeah. And he looked at me dead in the eyes and he goes, yeah? Yeah, I don't think so. You know, there were so many other ways of answering that. Yes, with a period at the end, would have been a good one. There's so many ways of being able to explain mitigated risks. There's so many ways of being able to describe how to be safe when traveling. But putting a question mark at the end, he was instantly out. And in fact, I had to take that file because there was nothing about what she said that he would trust after that. Our voice tells a story completely separate of the words we say. Our voice can come across as arrogant. It can come across as unsure. It can come across as overbearing, as unsure, unconfident, weak. Or it can come across as authoritative. It can come across as confident. It can come across as reassuring. Your clients are listening to hear that you have the confidence in what you're offering, that you have the confidence in what you're proposing to them. See, being soft-spoken isn't necessarily a kryptonite. It could actually be your superpower. Because the flip to that is somebody who has a really big, booming voice that does a lot of talking might actually be what turns a client off. Because sometimes people talk too much without taking the time to listen. Now, we also want to make sure that we stay in control of the conversation, that we are following a sales framework. It's what we talk about in Curious to Booked. The sales framework is so important to being able to direct how the conversation flows so that you have that to lean on to give you that bit of confidence, to give you that direction of where the conversation travels. We don't want to overtake and run right over them. If you do have a bigger voice, it's when that reminder comes in that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth and to use them in proportion. I think that was one of the best sales tips I got. I actually had somebody who told me, she goes, when you talk, your eyes light right up. Now, this was like 20 years ago when my eyes were not near as saggy as they are. I remember the days when I had really big eyes. But, you know, I used to talk and my eyes would get so big because I would get so animated and so excited. And she actually said to me, she goes, when you do that, you can actually intimidate people. And people might shy away because you're too much. Oh my heavens. Even as I'm saying that, I understand it. I get it. And I do put it into practice. But just repeating those words, you're too much. Huh. That's funny. Okay. I guess we're going to therapy again sooner than later. But no, for real. We all have these stories that are embedded in us somewhere deep within. Being soft-spoken may actually be rooted in a story where you were told, just shh, be quiet. You've got to speak quieter. There was somebody on television who had like a very sweet, calm voice. That was a learned behavior to make the people within her life happy. You have to find your voice, your authenticity, your way of being. Your voice is your most powerful asset in your business. That is one of the biggest reasons why, when you're giving your proposal, that you either get them on the Zoom, get them in person, get them on the phone, and as an absolute last resort, that you're going to send them a video message where you're going to go through the proposal and you are going to voice it. See, a voice is so important in a sales conversation that's why email, text, etc. is the worst way of sending proposals. Because we don't know what voice they're hearing in their head at the moment. We don't know what emotion, tonality, punctuation they're adding to it when they're reading the proposal. Have you ever read a text message from somebody and thought one thing, but in reality, they thought something else when they sent it because of the mood you were in, the energy you were in, the thoughts you were having at the time that you sent it? It can completely change the outcome of what was sent based entirely on the way it's read, entirely on the voice that they heard in their head while they read it. Your voice is the thing that is going to make you a connector within your audience, within your client. They need to hear that reassurance, that certainty, that confidence that you have. Confidence doesn't come out of the volume. It comes out of what you say and how you say it. You can be soft-spoken and have absolute authority. You can also be soft-spoken and not taken seriously because you put a question mark at the end of everything you say. Soft-spoken and question marks are two different conversations. I think a lot of times when we hear somebody describe themselves as soft-spoken, we assume they're putting question marks at the end. And sometimes they might feel like they are, and sometimes maybe they are. But there are other times that they put those periods and they put those exclamations. I'm going to tell you, there is one woman within a group that I belong, and she's beautifully soft-spoken. And she is quiet, and she does not say much. But there is no way on earth I'm meeting her at the end of a dark back alley. Because I would never want to go toe-to-toe with her because she may be soft-spoken. But When she speaks with crystal clear clarity and authority that to the core of my being, I know she knows her stuff and I won't second guess her because she knows it. It's not a matter of being the loudest person in the room. It's a matter of being the person who has the most authority, who has the most control of what they're saying, who works from the best integrity. If you want to make sure that you're not putting question marks at the end, don't be offering things you don't believe in. Don't be offering things, proposals, trips, packages, whatever, that you don't believe in. When I was selling, there were certain products I didn't sell. There were certain suppliers I didn't sell. There were certain things I didn't sell at certain price points. You know, there was times at Christmas or peak travel season when certain products cost a certain dollar. And taking out what things cost, or like that there was a price increase for those peak travel times, you know, I could understand that. But there were certain products that I would say to my clients, I would say to them, you know what, at that price point, I can't, not at that price point. If it was at this price point, then yeah, I would say that we could work it out. But at this price point, I would really rather you looked at this instead. Because again, if you're going to spend this much over your budget, well, then let's just go this tiny bit more and let's get you this, because the quality of your experience is night and day difference. What do you think? You know, we want to make sure that they see it, that they know that you have their best interest. They are looking to borrow confidence from you. So if you think you're soft-spoken, it's okay. Just say it with full integrity. Say it with a period. Say it with an exclamation mark. Say it with authority. If you're not soft-spoken, that's okay too. But just understand you don't want to overtalk people just for the sake of overtalking. We might even actually have to do a whole nother episode at some point about being too loud. But what I want to really emphasize before we wrap this episode is just making sure that you are using your voice to help your clients. Until next time, happy selling.